Welcome to part two of Beverly Julius's story of growing up in the 1920s and 30s in a small Colorado coal town.
During the Depression, when we didn't take a newspaper, my dad had, right after supper, when he came home from the mines, he always bathed and was sitting, put on good trousers and a shirt and tie for supper. We all sat around we all ate at the table.
And he had a tie on. He dressed up.
He'd have a tie on. But then during the Depression, while we were cleaning up the kitchen, he'd go down to the pool hall. His brother owned a pool hall in Florence, and he'd read the papers. And then he'd bring home a candy bar. And when he'd bring home a candy bar, it was cut into 5 pieces. And we each got a piece, and we got our books, and we sat and read, nibbled on our candy.
So it was pretty quiet in the house. Everybody was reading or doing homework?
Yeah, but there were things we listened to on TV, on the radio, that he let us. Entertaining us was not something that our parents worried about. We listened to the radio in the evening. I Love a Mystery was 1 half-hour show that we listened to at supper time. It came on about the time we finished eating and were having dessert. Our radio shows we listened to through the week were Fibber McGee and Molly, Life of Riley, Jack Benny, George Burns and Gracie Allen, and the Hit Parade. And Mama listened to Stella Dallas, a soap opera.
During that time growing up, did you feel safe and that things were going to be all right? Because the nation was suffering.
We never felt like things were wrong. On Sundays, we always drove to Canyon City, and because the prisoners had a band and they played band music every Sunday afternoon. And then on the way home, Dad would stop at the candy store and buy butterscotch candy, was like $1, and we'd have one of those on the way home.
Now expand on that. I'm curious about this going to the prison for the prison band.
Well,
paint me a picture.
Have you been in Canyon?
Years ago.
Okay, well,
just to visit.
Yeah.
Let me be clear.
Well, the prison was like this, but up here was a big balcony, and the prisoners sat on that balcony with their band, and we were parked in like a big park in front of it.
Now, could you just drive?
We just drive in.
The guards would check and make sure everything was.
Well, no one checked us. They played probably a couple hours.
Did a lot of people from Florence do it, or was it just something you
Florence
folks did?
and Canyon, people walked to it, people drove to it.
Were you able to intermingle with the prisoners, or were they kept separate?
No, there were prisoners out to help you park, and I remember one coming to the car once and talking to my mom.
So there wasn't anything scary about it? People weren't afraid? Or
No.
How old were you?
Probably 12, 13, about like that. And we'd get out and play, and there were always the inmates that were could go out and help whatever needed to be done, pick up the trash, and then they worked on a big farm.
Was there a particularly hard time for your family growing up? Probably one of them was when your father broke his hip.
If there was, I didn't realize it. I know that my skirts were made from, a lot of them were made from my Uncle Frankie's discarded pants. But I don't know, they didn't let us feel poor.
How did they do that?
They were just good parents.
Was there a sense that you said that you didn't feel this depression, that
No.
You were insulated from it in a way, probably
yes.
largely from your
from
parents.
The parents, and kids all played together. They'd play at night under the street light. We went to high school, roller skated to high school, and played tennis after school. But
tell me about your mother. Your father was an engineer of sorts and well-read. Describe your mother for us.
My mother was a disciplinarian.
Oh, she was the hand. I see.
My dad never touched us, but Mom would pop us on the bottom once in a while. But we all learned to do chores. We helped in the we had a big garden. She made all my clothes. She made doll clothes. She made me a big dollhouse out of cardboard box for Christmas one year. And the kids always liked to come to our house because there was always something to do.
Well, between your dad and your mom, it sounds like they liked kids as well.
Yeah.
So it was a place for people to. You had a yard with a miniature golf course.
Yeah.
What year was that? I mean, how?
Oh, I was born in 21. And we lived in Coal Creek until I was in the 4th grade. So it was between those years that he did that.
You talked about Coal Creek, where the Italians lived on one side of the town and the Scots and the Irish lived on the other, and never the twain shall meet.
Not really. They didn't.
People weren't
But my dad,
chummy?
my folks were real friends with the Davises and the Wardrobes, and they lived on the other side of town.
So, do you remember that being a problem in school?
No, never was.
So the kids didn't worry about it. It was more the grown-ups.
Yeah, and same way in Florence. We moved on one side where most of the Italians lived, and the English lived on the other. And when I graduated from high school, my cousin Joyce was the valedictorian, and I was in the honor society, but not as smart as she was. But anyhow, the principal called us in and said, "Now you're both going to go to college. Drop that I from your name." But we didn't.
Really? Tell me what your maiden name was.
Berardi.
Berardi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was all kinds of that advice going around, wasn't it? People were trying to shorten those.
Yeah, they were taking the I's or the O's off.
Did you experience prejudice as a kid, being Italian? Because the Italians had a rough time in the 20s.
No, we didn't. I was head girl of the high school. I loved joining clubs. And as far as I know, we all just really got along.
How did the community have fun back then? What kind of things were going on during the Depression?
Well, they had public dances, which I was never allowed to go to.
Would your parents go?
No. My dad was really strict about that. This is a memory I have. He took out Alan was a freshman and I was a junior. He took out a pack of cigarettes worth 15 cents, and he said, "Now I smoke, but it's a luxury." He said, "If you pick up a cigarette and you smoke, then you'll start paying your mama for board and room and your laundry."
There's a threat.
And then he didn't drink, and my brother Alan had a friend called Joe Morelli, and he lived in Rockville, which was another mining town. And he'd want to go out there and stay all night with his friend Joe, and my dad would say, "Don't you dare take anything to drink, any alcohol. If you do, your friend's father's going to be in trouble."
So your father didn't drink. He was Italian but didn't like wine? I mean, wine is a staple of a lot of Italian homes.
No, not at all.
Where did that come from, do you think?
I don't know. It didn't come from his dad, because his dad would get pretty happy every now and then.
Maybe that's where it came from. Your father didn't want that.
Probably.
So the community was pretty cooperative, even though there was lots of different ethnic groups within the community.
Yeah. No, there wasn't any difference between among the kids. I don't even know that there was among the adults, because my parents were really stay-at-home sort of people. And I, for living through the Depression, I really had a good life.
That was Beverly Julius recalling life in the Depression years in a small Colorado coal town.